Chapter 5. By unspoken agreement, Lissa and Galen followed Perrin's directions to the letter. They had breakfast every morning, Galen murmuring a morning greeting to her before dropping to his knees at her side. The first time he'd done so had been awkward and stilted, but she'd given her permission and accepted his touch. Now it had become commonplace for him to press his ear to her stomach, hands on the roundness as he growled and spoke to their son. They still refrained from conversing more than necessary, but they weren't together. Because they were in a relationship, it was for their son. She simply had to remind her heart of that daily, such as when he took her for walks through the expansive gardens or when he paced at her side while they toured some of the small shops and prepared the nursery. Those were the most difficult times, when she would stare at an adorable blanket or an even cuter stuffed animal and know that while it might bring a smile to her child, she would never see it. Yet each time those thoughts stirred, her pup responded in kind, which drew Galen's attention. Those thoughts encroached as she rested in a window seat, attention on the young werewolves frolicking in the yard. Some were toddlers, some teens, but their joy was unmistakable no matter the age. What will you look like when you're that age? As if her thoughts and unease had drawn him, Galen stepped into the room. He was 6 feet of pure male and unquestioned dominance. He was dressed in one of his typical suits, yet he'd abandoned the jacket, tie, and even his shoes before he sought her out. It was something she'd recognized early on. If he could remove his shoes, he would always. Agape Mao? He met her gaze, and then his attention dropped to her stomach, to the rolling wave that trembled through her flesh. I'm fine. How was your day? Trivialities and small talk. It seemed that's all they were good for nowadays. He frowned and ignored her question as he padded toward her. He lowered himself and knelt at her side, his lips immediately pressing against her undulating stomach and his hands stroking her roundness. Familiar rumbles poured over her, the sounds soothing and comforting in their rhythm and tone. She closed her eyes and leaned back against the wall, relaxing. She hadn't even realized he'd stopped until he spoke. What has you upset? Lissa shook her head. Nothing. That single word had become their code word for the past, and when she used it, he frowned even harder. He remained silent for a moment, his eyes seeming to will her to tell him more, but she remained mute on the issue. Perrin had been clear. She shouldn't get upset, should shy away from what caused her distress. Now wasn't the time. But Perrin doesn't know that there never will be a time. Then let us give you something. He easily rolled to his feet and held a hand out for her. Come. I have a surprise that will please you both. The teasing smile that graced his lips reminded her of the Galen she'd met all those months ago. The one who had quick grins and a passion that seemed unending. Passion. That word kindled thoughts of his mouth on hers, his hands tracing her curves and his lips following that same path. He'd been her first, her only, and he'd showed her what could truly be between a man and a woman. Showed her how a wolf loved a female and put his brand on her heart and soul. Now, so close to delivery, her body was warming and aching for him. One smile and that's all it took. There had to be something wrong with her. How could she be this attracted to a man who was so quick to destroy her? When those brown eyes sparkled and slowly slipped to yellow, she had her answer. He was everything to her, 2 halves of a whole and all she'd ever desired in one male. That smile slowly heated and his nostrils flared, and she knew he scented her burgeoning desire. Unacceptable. The last thing she wanted was for him to realize she still craved him. Great. She placed her hand on his and carefully slid from the window seat. Her growing stomach made rising difficult, but Galen was quick to assist her. Lead the way. The small smirk teasing his lips told her he was on to her game of avoidance. Instead of replying, he led her toward the archway, only pausing when Leo turned the corner and came into view. She noticed he carried a pair of sturdy sandals with thick gripping soles, similar to those Galen bought her when she first came to his home, ones that made the descent to the beach safer. The beach? You're taking me. Leo arrived, handing over the small burden, and Galen dropped into a crouch and reached for one of her bare feet. Down to the beach? Yes. But you said it was too dangerous. Galen met her gaze through his thick lashes. As Perrin likes to point out, I am occasionally overbearing and wrong. Leo twitched, and Lissa didn't miss the tightening of the other man's jaw and the tenseness and anger that seemed to consume the other wolf at those words. But he slid the last strap into place and then pushed to his feet once again, reaching for her in that same move. But nothing. We will take the steps. Slowly, and you will listen to me. Excitement bubbled within her, and not even his autocratic words could diminish the feelings. Yes, yes. She would have bounced on her toes like a child if she was sure she wouldn't topple over. From the moment I put my foot on the first step to the last, I swear. And all of those before and after as well, he countered. There was a teasing glint in his eyes and some of her old feelings of closeness and caring resurfaced. I'm not so sure about that, but I'm open to negotiation. That was a joke they'd often shared, the fast and furious negotiations Galen enjoyed in the boardroom then brought into the bedroom on a softer, much more sensual scale. When he licked his lips, exposing his sharpened white fangs, she knew his mind went there as well. We'll see. He reached for her hand and she readily welcomed his touch. Let's get you down there first. Lissa wasn't worried. While she admitted to being a little more unbalanced than usual, she was still very agile and quick on her feet. She had to be, considering her profession before Galen found her. So while he spent 15 minutes growling during a trip that used to take only 5 minutes, she focused on the ocean, the crashing waves, and the clean scent of the sea. The pups that had been playing in the yard now peeked over the edge of the cliff, watching their careful trudge down the steps. She kept glancing up at them, noticing the sad, kicked puppy expressions they each had. Watch where you're going. His roar was swallowed by the ocean, as was her sigh of annoyance. Lissa paused and looked over her shoulder at him. I am watching. I'm fine. Just thought that it was sad that my presence means the pups can't play on the beach. She gestured toward the small gathering. Look at them. Galen sighed. You're going to be a pushover for our son, aren't you? A spear of sadness, a bolt of emotional pain she didn't want to experience, struck her and she was quick to shove it back into the hole it crawled out of. Now was not the time. The stairs was not the place. So she adopted a smile and upbeat tone and hoped he didn't try and look deeper. I seem to be a sucker for a good-looking man. He gave her a skeptical look, as if he didn't believe her in the slightest, but remained silent. The pups are down here nearly every day. They can wait a few hours. Besides, everyone knows we cater to a bearing woman. He slowly eased closer and placed his hand on her stomach. It was the first time he'd touched her for something other than speaking to their son. It was the first he'd initiated since they were reunited. They carry the future of the pack. Right. She almost forgot she was merely the incubator. Instead of saying another word, Lissa nodded and returned to her path, carefully picking her way down the steps. It seemed to take forever, but eventually her sandaled feet were standing on soft sand and the ocean spread out before her in a large blanket of blue. It's gorgeous, she whispered. Yes. His voice was just as soft and she realized that instead of looking at their scenery surrounding them, he was staring at her. Their gazes connected, eyes locked upon each other, and it was as if the recent weeks and dreadful months melted away. It was like the first day he'd ever drawn her down to the sandy shore and shown her this small slice of his personal heaven. It was a place she savored but didn't want to return to. There was no joy or answers to be found there. Swallowing hard and clearing her throat, she shuffled away and grasped the rough-hewn stone cliff face. She reached for her ankle, raising her leg at the same time, and realized it so wasn't happening. She tried again, straightening, and then bending downward in an attempt to grab her ankle, and yet again was unsuccessful. A little chuckle came from her left and she shot him a glare. Before trying the third time. Agape Mao, there is a reason I placed the shoes on your feet. He strolled forward and lowered himself, reaching for her ankle and carefully cradling her foot. Because it means that I can remove something from you. And wasn't that more than a little suggestive? You don't want to take anything off me. You hate me, she blurted out the words before she could think better of them. It was the truth whether she wanted to say the words aloud or not. Galen didn't say anything, merely continued unbuckling her shoes and carefully lowering her bare feet to the pale sand. When he was done, he easily stood. Her shoes gathered in one hand and he reached for her with the other. He twined their fingers together as if they were lovers and led her toward the water. As they neared the rolling waves, she noticed the large umbrella, blankets and basket off to their left. A picnic. It was sweet. Sweet and hinted at a caring she knew he couldn't feel toward her. He dropped her shoes near the pile and then they continued toward the gentle waves. They moved forward as one until the cool water tickled her toes and then they merely stopped and stared out at the ever-reaching ocean before them. Some nights they would do this, silently stand at the water's edge and enjoy the deepening sunset. The only difference between then and now was that only their fingers touched when in the past they used to be wrapped around each other. The water splashed her ankles, chilling her, and she let the rhythmic waves soothe her just as she took comfort from the feel of his hand in hers. She wasn't sure how long they quietly remained in place, but it was Galen who broke the silence. I don't hate you. She opened her eyes and focused on him, unable to believe his words. I hate what you did. I don't understand it, but I don't hate you. He sighed. And I don't know what to do any longer, he growled. Perrin will not allow us to talk about the past, but I cannot let go of it if I cannot talk to you about it, but to rehash could threaten my future. She had no doubt about what future he referenced, especially when his stare dropped to her stomach. That future definitely didn't include her. I know you want to hash things out, but I'm not sure why. What would talking about it change? When he's born, you're going to do exactly what you plan on doing. My wishes and hopes be damned. He opened his mouth as if to speak and she pushed on. No, the why no longer matters. Maybe not to you. Of course it concerns me, but as soon as he's born you get what you want. What good is talking about this when the result is the same? She looked out over the waves, enjoying the waning heat of the sun as it set and cast colors into the sky. Let me enjoy this, Galen. She returned her attention to him. Let me enjoy my pregnancy, let me enjoy carrying him, and let later take care of itself. He stroked her with his stare, those eyes scanning her face. She knew what he saw, the shadowed lines of fatigue and worry as well as the dark bags under her eyes. Despite her words and desire to live in the present, the past still dogged her sleep. He stepped closer and she didn't have the good sense to back away. Not when it. Familiar tenderness filled his gaze, immediately followed by a small frown. His hands rose, palms coming to rest on her cheeks. I have been pushing you and that is unforgivable. He leaned forward and pressed his lips to her forehead, speaking against her skin. No more. I swear it. We will bring this pup into the world with happy parents. Damn him for teasing her, for tormenting her, but she refused to reveal her knowledge, hoping he'd see his error before it was too late. Okay. Excellent. He released her face and snared her left hand, entwining their fingers and then carefully leading her deeper into the water. Come. I know. You love the waves and this will make our pup happy. He wasn't lying on either count. Their baby was unmistakably excited and enjoying her happiness in the ocean. For now she would push everything away. No future. No past. There was only now with Galen. With his wide smile, sparkling eyes and glorious body. When had he discarded his shirt? Because now he was bare from the waist up. His muscles bulging and stretching his skin, taunting her with his deliciously carved form. Her mouth watered, memories of tasting every inch of him as he taught her the joys of lovemaking. He loved it when she bit him, when she sank her teeth into his flesh just short of piercing his skin. And it didn't matter where. His chest, his shoulder, even his inner thigh, though those nearby bits were totally off limits. Her body immediately responded to his unclothed state, her nipples pebbling, and heat settling between her thighs. No matter what, she craved him more than any other, and she imagined she always would. She shivered, desire unfurling and gently sliding through her. He narrowed his eyes the tiniest bit, and then the color flashed yellow for the barest of moments before his inner wolf was banished again. It was obvious the wolf wanted her, but she figured that was instinctual. She carried Galen's pup. Made sense. Are you cold? So he was trying to pretend he didn't know why she trembled. No, she shook her head. I'm fine, I don't want to miss this. A larger wave splashed against her thighs, and she took an involuntary step back. In that instant Galen was there. His front plastered to her back, arms sliding around her waist and settling on the curve of her stomach. Careful. Careful. Careful about what? She couldn't think of anything besides the overwhelming warmth that struck her with his closeness. Not just the heat, but Also the knowledge that his bare skin was so close. And then there was his body's reaction to her. His hardness was unmistakable, his length firmly pressing into her back. She cleared her throat. I'm fine. He hummed and lowered his head, lips brushing the shell of her ear. Then, humor me, Agape Mao, and allow me this. It was almost as if he asked permission, but she knew that was insane. Alpha never asked for anything. He merely assumed that whatever he desired was his due. When she didn't reply, he nuzzled her, the rough hair on his cheeks, scraping her pale skin and sending a tremble of the knee down her spine. Agape Mao? Was that the scrape of his fangs over her skin? It was something he used to do, teeth scratching her neck and shoulders, and she'd always loved it. Still loved it. Perrin wanted them to live in the now? Then she would. Of course. She leaned back against him, reveling in this closeness. Her hips and ass brushed his firm length, and she didn't shy from his hardness, but embraced it. Did she know their plans? Know what was to come? Yes, but while they had their ideas, she had her own. One's about trying to escape once again. But first she'd enjoy this. Cease fire and take whatever Galen was willing to give, and pray those memories would carry her through the tough times ahead. As it seemed she could love and hate him at the same time. Melissa? What are you doing? What are you offering? She carefully turned sideways, continuing to allow him to support her, and tilted her head back. That depends on you. On whether you meant. He ran his fingers down her face, tracing the line of her jaw and then brushing the tips over her lips. His eyes were focused on that part of her, and she could practically read his thoughts. He'd taught her how to do so many things with her mouth. Kiss, taste, suck. I want you. I will not deny this. But I will not risk our child. Lissa shook her head, falling a little more in love with him. She knew his sex drive, knew how much wolves needed that release, which reminded her of how much time they spent apart. Had he gone to Andrea? It didn't matter. Lissa was here now. At least she pretended it didn't matter. As she hid from the truth. She took too long to reply, hesitated, and then no longer had the chance to tell him that Perrin told her that making love with Galen was safe. Galen lowered his head and captured her lips in a passionate and punishing kiss. It was a violent meeting of mouths, his tongue delving into her, tasting her, and she returned the favor. She moaned with the first burst of his flavors over her taste buds. She'd missed this. Missed his smoky and sweet taste. Missed the way his sharpened fangs scraped her lower lip without breaking the delicate skin. He nibbled and sucked, teased and tormented, and all the while growls rumbled in his chest. The longer the kiss continued, the more dominant he became, until one hand was buried in her hair, and he used that grip to move her head as he desired. He tilted her ever so slightly, taking their kiss even deeper, and she discovered that the ultimate release was nearly upon her from his small attentions alone. She ached and throbbed for him, desperate to have him inside her, to become one with him. She whimpered and leaned against him, allowing him to take her full weight. Was that subtle shift, that transference of weight, that ended in their kiss. He tore his mouth from hers, continuing to support her while he turned his head away. His chest heaved with heavy pants, and Lissa discovered she was having just as much trouble breathing. Arousal and need for him thrummed in her veins, and she bit back the urge to beg him for more. Slowly her heart rate returned to normal, easing until she was able to breathe clearly once again. Galen took one last deep breath and released it slowly, before returning his attention to her. That was a mistake. It felt as if he'd punched her in the chest, crushing her heart as he broke her bones. Oh, she wasn't sure how she got the single syllable past her lips, but she did. I see. Then he was touching her again, sliding his arms around her increased bulk. It is simply a mistake to start something I cannot finish. He dropped his gaze to her mouth. I always told you your mouth was dangerous, and you know I cannot stop with just a kiss. Not with you. I never could. His lips twisted in a small grimace. And that is something of the past. At least this time that single thought didn't bring rage to his features. Come. It is late and soon the sun will be gone. Today is not the day for a picnic. Let me lead you inside where it is safe. Safe. Chapter 6. Lissa wasn't sure how he'd managed it, but a week later she stepped out of the bathroom after a long hot shower to find a gorgeous evening gown laid out on the bed. It was a deep teal, the sumptuous fabric like silk to the touch. And it was so light it almost felt like air. The cut was beautiful, clinging. Yet not flowing, yet not. She wouldn't look like she was wearing a circus tent, but she also wouldn't look like a stuffed sausage. It will look beautiful on you. The deep masculine voice sent a shiver of knee down her spine. She held the massive bath sheet in place and turned toward Galen. He leaned negligently against the doorway, arms crossed over his chest and ankles. Crossed as well. His hair was windblown and unruly. His pristine white shirt was wrinkled, the top few buttons undone, and the arms were rolled up and pushed to his elbows, which exposed his deeply tanned and strong forearms. His slacks were equally disheveled, the harsh straight creases now flattened, while other wrinkles took up residence along his legs. And he was barefoot. You look like he just rolled out of bed. How many times had he had this rumpled look after they'd spent an afternoon together? They'd tease and torment each other as they went about their day, race up the stairs clinging and ripping at each other's clothing and leaving them wherever they lay. Later, he'd slide into them once again so he could hunt up food for them. This was exactly what she used to see. Whose bed did he just leave? She didn't have the right to ask. Galen gave her a small smile. Exhausted. From what? This merger is exhausting me from sunup to sundown. Merger. She hadn't heard it called that before. If you're too tired to go out. She let her statement drift away, waiting for him to fill in the blanks. Galen shook his head. No. I've been looking forward to this all day. I saw this dress and thought of you. I can't wait to see you in it. The heat that filled his gaze told her he couldn't wait to see her out of it, either. Was he that insatiable? Looking as if he just climbed from one woman's bed and he was anxious to find his way into hers? The true question was, did she care? No. She was savoring the present, reveling in today and not worrying about yesterday or tomorrow. Oh, okay. He pushed away from the doorway and slowly padded toward her, his footsteps silent. When he reached for her, she gladly went into his arms and enjoyed the feel of his arms holding her closely. He brought his mouth to hers, lips brushing over her flesh in a soft caress that began chaste and slowly deepened to more. He gently slipped his tongue into her mouth and she welcomed him, sinking into his kiss with complete abandon. This was as far as they'd gone. Since that moment in the ocean, their connections limited to their mouths, no matter how much she ached to stroke him. But that could be at an end. She'd spoken with Perrin earlier in the day. He carefully lifted his head and eased back but didn't release her. I've been looking forward to that all day. So have I. He hummed. Leo tells me Perrin was here to see you. That he stayed for quite a while and pulled rank on Leo, kicking him from the room. She could practically see the jealousy and anger roaring inside Galen's mind, the shudder sliding down over his eyes as it slowly consumed him. What was so important to say that he would be dismissed? What is going on between you and my brother? Lissa shook her head. Nothing. I had an appointment with my doctor and he said all is well, along with a few other things. Galen immediately released her and took a large step back. I will not be cuckolded in my own home. You are mine. You will never be alone with another male again. I forbid it. Lissa furrowed her brow. Galen. She shook her head. Hear me on this. I will tell him the same. He's my doctor. He came to see me about the baby. A low growl tumbled from his lips. Hear me, Galen. He took a deep breath and moved farther away from her, going to the door. Get dressed. We're leaving in an hour. With that, he spun and left, disappearing down the hallway and leaving her standing in the middle of her room wearing nothing but a towel and a mixture of anger and bewilderment on her face. What the hell just happened? She murmured to herself. Whatever just occurred, it was going to be hashed out over dinner. Her stomach growled for food, or was that the baby? And the gorgeous dress called to her. She padded to the door and pushed it closed on silent hinges before returning to her preparations for the evening. She was thankful she'd never gotten into heavy makeup and intricate hairstyles, as well as the fact that Galen's men hadn't dragged all the makeup she owned across the Atlantic. That meant that getting ready was a matter of blow-drying her hair, putting a little gloss on her lips and a hint of color on her cheeks, as well as a dash of mascara. All things she'd snared on their first trip to town together. The dress was easy to slip into, the designer seeming to realize that dressing was an intricate and interesting dance for pregnant women. She was ready to go a good 15 minutes prior to Galen's stated time, and she donned the beautiful flats he'd also given her that matched the dress. Ever so carefully she made her way downstairs and to the formal salon. The room was empty and quiet since no one typically used the space, and she slowly made her way toward the massive window that overlooked the main driveway and the glittering city below. As much as she despised Galen for his plans, she couldn't fault the man for what he would be able to give their son. All the advantages of his money and position would be nothing but a benefit to their child, especially since he would have Andrea as his mother. The thought brought a heavy sadness to her heart and stinging tears to her eyes. She needed to discuss it with Galen, see if she could get him to change his mind. Something drew her attention, some low sound or disturbance in the air, and she tore her attention from the scenery and to the room's entry. Andrea. The woman was beautiful as always, her lithe body, gentle curves and striking features always drew the eyes of men. With the clinging dress now hugging her form, she was both gorgeous and sexy. She had no doubt more than one wolf chased after her tail. Galen as well? Melissa. The sweet tone was there even as the woman's face turned into an evil sneer. How lovely to see you. And you. She knew Andrea could send her lie but didn't give a damn. Going out for the evening? As you can see. Andrea strolled the deeper into the room, her hips swaying from side to side with pure feminine confidence. Surprising. I didn't believe Galen had any energy left in him after our day together. The use of his name, his appearance when he'd returned home, combined with the suggestion he had been with Andrea all day, pierced her heart. It was naive of her to believe he wouldn't visit another woman's bed. He anticipated raising their son with Andrea. The woman was the alpha bitch, so of course they would be intimate. Unless he has changed over the months we were apart, he has quite a bit of stamina and endurance. I don't have to tell you that he can be insatiable, do I? With Lissa's reminder, Andrea's eyes flashed and her fangs dropped to prick the woman's lower lip. Perhaps Lissa was wrong. Perhaps. Andrea took a deep breath and rolled her shoulders, and Lissa watched as the woman's wolf retreated. She licked her lips, gathering the droplets of blood, and the small wounds healed before Lissa's eyes. Of course you don't. His stamina is something I know well. She tilted her head to the side as if listening for something, and then delivered one last parting shot. Enjoy your dinner, for I will be enjoying your dessert. Lissa heard the sharp click of men's shoes on the marble of the foyer, and in less than a second Galen was framed in the doorway looking his impeccable self once again. Alpha, Andrea purred. I see you have recovered after our long and hard day. I'm so gratified to see that. Perhaps after your dinner. She paused and flashed another one of those sneers her way. I can speak with you again. Bitch. Of course, he quickly responded, his gaze traveling up and down Andrea's body, and the knife in her heart twisted. Gritting her teeth, she stepped forward and drew his attention back to her. Galen? Do we have reservations to keep? She'd been trying to forget the past. She truly had. But this, his visit to Andrea's bed while raining kisses on Lissa, blew those plans sky high. She would say her piece and then leave all of this behind. She'd been lulled into complacency over the past few weeks, but that was gone. Galen's head snapped back and he swung his attention to her as if he'd forgotten she was in the room. What? Yes, we have reservations. He looked to Andrea. I will come to you when I return. When you return alone. Now it was Andrea's turn to face her, that victorious smile now splitting her lips. Wonderful, I can't wait. Lissa didn't say another word as she strode toward the couple, nor did she speak when she strode past them and to the massive front door. Both Stavros and Leo stood nearby, but it was Stavros who leapt into action and quickly opened the door for her as Leo merely glared at her. But when that glare vanished in an instant, she knew that Galen was right behind her. Stavros abandoned the door when he saw Leo would not assist Lissa down the stairs, and he presented his arm for her use, elbow raised, arm bent so she could grip him as she descended. A growl followed them, but the man at her side didn't hesitate in his assistance and merely kept pace with her as she continued to the driveway. The rush of steps indicated Galen's rapid approach, and he finally met her at the door to their limo just as Stavros was aiding her into the vehicle. Another growl had the guard carefully retreating, and she realized the male was not cowering beneath Galen's anger. "You do not touch her," Galen snarled. Stavros merely shrugged but remained silent, his attention flicking to her, his gaze encompassing her in one glance before returning to his alpha. "You would have me not treat her as she deserves?" Your attention was engaged elsewhere. Our pack has always put bearing women above all others. Is that not so? As polite put-down went, it was effective. Galen's cheeks reddened for a brief moment before anger rushed forward again. "No one touches her." "As you say, Alpha." Stavros tilted his head to the side, but not in the full submission. Even Lissa recognized that. What had changed? Why was this male, who often remained silent about Lissa's treatment, suddenly taking his alpha to task? Galen crawled into the back with her, anger still present on his features, and the moment the door closed, he also put up the partition between the guards and them. "Do not ever do that again. I needed to speak with Andrea." When he said her name, Lissa tried to remain calm. She truly did. "And your childish behavior nearly cost a wolf his life. No one touches you and I will kill anyone who dares." "My behavior?" She gasped and grasped the door handle when the limo lurched into motion. She wasn't going to address his threat. He wouldn't kill someone over touching her. That had to be an exaggeration. "Childish? You're joking, right?" "No. I don't not understand your jealousy and dislike of Andrea. She has been my alpha bitch for years and I leaned heavily on her during your disappearance. You should appreciate the sacrifices she made on your behalf." He snarled at her, but she latched on to the word sacrifices. "Sacrifices? Sacrifices?" She turned in her seat to stare at him. "Are you kidding? You think that she's done anything out of the kindness of her heart? No, it was to further your plans. Don't put this on me. Don't pretend that she's sweetness and light while you two are scheming behind my back." "What are you talking about? What is wrong with you?" he growled. "Me?" She realized she was asking a lot of questions and not getting answers. She bit off the rest of her words and took a deep breath. "I'm not discussing this. I asked you not to say her name or speak about her in my presence. Your jealousy is tiresome." Fire filled his eyes. "Your idiocy is tiresome," she countered. "Melissa." There was no missing the warning in his tone. "What?" She curled her lip in an invitation of a wolf warning. "Andrea is." She lifted her hand, palm out, to silence him. "I will not do this." The car rolled to a stop, and she immediately reached for the handle, intent on escaping the vehicle. She managed to yank at the handle and get the door open before Galen stopped her. Hell, she'd even managed to place her feet on the asphalt and half rise from her seat. He snared a bundle of fabric which effectively halted her in her tracks. "Andrea is of my pack, and will always be a part of my pack. Lose the jealousy. It is no longer amusing." Lissa fought for calm and met his gaze with an unwavering stare. "Hatred and jealousy are not the same thing. So while you're fucking your mistress beside our baby's crib, remember you have to sleep at some point. And if I'm dead by then, I will haunt you until you die. Tell me, is that amusing?" Chapter 7. Lissa flashed the maitre d' a smile of thanks as he carefully assisted her into her seat, the man practically tripping over himself to give her whatever she desired. "Galen. You can give me Galen." However, it seemed no one could, because he was still tied to Andrea. The moment they'd stepped into the restaurant, his cell phone rang and Lissa got a quick peek at the caller ID. Surprise, surprise. "Andrea. Thank you so much. A glass of water would be wonderful. We'll order once." Galen completes his call. Galen has finished his call. He inserted smoothly as he glided forward. "Thank you for assisting my mate." "Of course, Alpha." The male stepped back and a waiter took his place. "Good evening, my name is Alfredo and tonight the chef has prepared." Lissa got lost amongst the dishes recited to her, the different preparations and meals twining together and getting twisted in her mind until by the time the male fell silent, she was simply aching for food. She didn't care what they will not order from the menu. "I am making just the thing for the Alpha and his lovely lady, Andrea. I did not get to prepare this for them last night. Shoo shoo. His lovely lady Andrea." Once again she was reminded that she shouldn't allow her hopes to grow simply because it was so painful when they were dashed. She locked eyes with Galen, and she had no doubt he saw the pain that filled her expression. At least he didn't bother with placating apologies. Instead she merely got a rueful grin. In that moment her future became startlingly clear. Alone or with the help of another, she was leaving. She'd almost allowed herself to believe she could talk to Galen about what she'd overheard about what Andrea had told her, but why? A large barrel-chested man came hurrying around the corner. Alpha, I sent it. You all the way in the kitchen. You and your lady will. The man stumbled to a stop. Oh. Quite. Galen quipped. He went through the introductions, giving her information about the restaurant chef and Galen's history with the man, but Lissa couldn't have cared less. Her only thoughts centered on how often did he flipped between her and Andrea? It didn't matter. She needed to stop torturing herself. If this wasn't further proof of why she needed to find a way to escape, she wasn't sure what else was needed. She must have murmured some sort of polite greeting because it wasn't long before the waiter and the chef drifted away, leaving Lissa and Galen alone in the secluded alcove. It is not as it seems, many in the pack believed. It doesn't matter. She lifted the napkin from her lap and carefully placed it on the tabletop. Do you know where I can find the ladies' room? A worried frown increased his brow. Is anything wrong? No. I simply need the facilities and a moment to compose myself. He lifted his hand in a casual way, and the waiter rushed forward. A murmured conversation, and then the mail was gone as Galen rose from his seat. Come, I will take you. She shook her head. No. Just direct to me. Melissa, this is not the time to. Why? She hissed. Afraid I'll embarrass the big bad alpha? She pushed to her feet and ignored his outstretched hand. I think you're doing that quite well yourself. How does the pack feel about you fucking your alpha bitch while I'm pregnant with your pup? She snorted. That's right, they're probably in on the plan too. She stepped closer, sneer in place, and all attempts at being discreet gone. All of this talk, all of these assurances that you don't want to hurt me or our child. Let me tell you something, Alpha, if you take my baby, that will kill me. Do you consider that harm? I don't know what you're talking about, but this is not the place. The words were low and growled, the sound silencing everyone else in the restaurant. You're right. This isn't the place for argument, and this isn't the place for me. I know your plans and I refuse to go along with them. I thought you were coming to care. She snapped off the rest of her sentence. But you're playing us both, aren't you? Or am I just being played while you two fuck yourselves through a day and then laugh about the pregnant woman who you seduced, impregnated, and then you're going to steal her child while disposing of her? She shook her head. It doesn't matter. I'm done. You want to keep me captive? Kill me? Tell that to your whole fucking pack. Half of them are here, aren't they? Tell them what kind of leader they have. What kind of alpha bitch rules at his side. Tell them. Her human roar rang through the air, hanging over them all, and she could feel the stare of every person in the space, every wolf in the space. She had no doubt they all had the ability to drop to 4 feet and transform into beasts. And now they knew, or at least had the truth put to words by Lissa. Galen snared her bicep, grip firm but still gentle as he turned her toward the front of the restaurant. He lowered his voice but still spoke loudly enough for her to hear. That meant everyone else could as well with their enhanced ability. I don't know what's got into you. Is this some sort of hormone thing? Perrin warned me. Perrin warned Lissa about a lot of things too. Specifically the fact that she needed to remain calm, needed to keep from getting overexcited, because when she did, her son reacted. The first wave of pain hit her when they were halfway to the entry, the roll of her son inside her sending a bolt of agony down her spine. She stumbled and caught herself on a nearby chair. The only thing that kept it from toppling was the fact it held an occupant. The sudden move had her out of Galen's hold, and so she now clutched her stomach with that free hand. She gasped and heaved, fighting for air and battling to banish the agony. Melissa. She ignored him, but she couldn't ignore his hands on her. Not when their son reacted to the connection by stretching and growling. It was too soon. She couldn't give birth yet, but he didn't want to listen. What is wrong with you? You. She snapped, and the baby seemed intent on clawing his way out of her to attack Galen. Shouts and snarls of Greek filled the air, one voice on top of another, and she tuned them out as she focused on her baby. Large calloused hands grasped her and she gasped, shooting her gaze to the owner. She marginally relaxed when she met Stavros, his gaze. Come, I take you home now. Perrin is meeting us there. Lissa shook her head. She didn't want to go there ever again. Yes, I know my alpha, and what you are saying cannot be true. It hurts. The baby, yes? Perrin will assist you and I will keep the baby safe. No, she shook her head, but then he didn't give her a choice. With Stavros' touch and Galen's distance, her son calmed and the large male easily swept her into his arms. A wide path opened to them, and then they were striding toward the front entrance and through the doors. Leo stood there, his dislike still present and palpable, but seeming to be slightly less harsh. Why did he finally realize his alpha wasn't the wonderful man all assumed him to be? It didn't matter. The pack didn't matter. None of this mattered. She was done being a pushover. A good bit of the pack filled the restaurant tonight, and by morning, everyone would know how Galen was treating her and his plans. She imagined he'd be happy to see the back of her come morning. Stavros carefully slid her into the back of the limo and joined her, issuing orders to Leo in a spattering of Greek, and then they were on their way. She closed her eyes, the throbbing pain from her son now settling into a low, pulsing ache. She closed her eyes as they navigated the streets, unwilling to watch the scenery speed by. She knew enough to understand that Leo had called Perrin and that they were headed to Galen's villa, while he handled the problem she'd created. She'd created? No, it was him. Him and that alpha bitch. It seemed like she just closed her eyes and then she was opening them again as the limo pulled to a stop. Once again she was carried, and Stavros did not stop moving until they'd reached her room. Perrin was already there waiting for her. He brought his portable ultrasound along with other testing devices and had already pulled back the covers for her. Perrin. No talking. Get changed and get into bed. He was issuing orders as only a doctor could. Stavros lowered her to her feet and finally slipped his arms from around her, but spoke to Perrin. The alpha ordered the house cleared of all but the necessary staff. Leo is outside the door. Call out if you need anything. Leo. He'd just as soon leave her to rot than help her. Let's see what you've done to yourself. Perrin reached for her and she scooted away. I'm tired of hearing that. I've done nothing but get pregnant by your piece of shit brother. Everything is my fault. Everything that happens is due to something I've done. She hated that tears stung her eyes. Okay. It's a joke, Melissa. Breathe with me now. You know this isn't good for either of you. Galen isn't good for either of us. I know, and he won't come near you without your permission. I thought he shook his head. I didn't realize what was between you two, but now. He held out his hand, palm up. Let me help you. Her baby whimpered. She felt him whimper, and that made the choice for her. She padded to the doctor and allowed him to help her, allowed him to ease her to the bed and then assist her in retaining her balance as she changed, and he kept his gaze averted through it all. Before long, she was resting on the mattress as Perrin examined her and subsequently the baby via ultrasound. It didn't take him long to confirm that her son was fine and Lissa hadn't been injured. When he was done, he packed away his tools and stood to leave. He moved toward the end of the bed and stopped to glance over his shoulder at her. Leo told me what you said, Anne. She opened her mouth to stop his attempts at justifying his alpha's behavior. Just wait. I'm not saying you're unjustified or mistaken in your beliefs. I don't know what's going on between you two or what made you think what you do, but the last thing he would ever do is harm you physically or keep you away from the baby. He hates even letting you out of his sight. You're his mate. This distance between you is slowly killing him. She grimaced. I'm sure. That's why he's turning to Andrea. Pulled the other leg. Perrin shook his head and faced her once again, arms crossed over his chest. He couldn't betray you even if that was the one thing he desired above all. Other. You're his mate. I don't know what that means. Shock filled his features. Melissa, you're it for him. Wolf's mate for life. And you're his. You're pregnant with his pup. She rolled her eyes, unable to believe his words. Accidental pregnancies happen all the time. He shook his head. Not for wolves. The fact you conceived his child proves your claim on him. Our people are able to conceive children via in vitro if necessary, but natural pregnancy only occurs between mates. And there's nothing more natural than what we did together. Perrin continued. Each wolf has one mate and you're his. I wish I could believe you. I wish I could believe that Andrea is lying. Try. For you, for the child, for the pack. Just try. He sighed. Galen is keeping away from the villa and it'll be just you and his most trusted guards. Tonight, we'll see how you feel in the morning and then I think you two need to talk. I would. As your doctor and as a member of the Liakos pack, I'm asking you to talk to my brother, my alpha. If you need someone nearby, I'll be here, but after the restaurant things are in turmoil. We need you two to work things out in some way so he can restore order to the wolves. Right now, he shook his head. It's not looking good. Her heart froze. What do you mean? A wolf being accused of abusing his mate is a very serious thing, and what you said in the restaurant is being repeated to one and all. There are rumblings of removing Galen. She shook her head. I don't know what that means. The only way an alpha can be removed is through challenge and Chapter 8. The next morning, Lissa pulled on a pair of loose-fitting pants and a clinging maternity top. Both outlined the large bulge of her stomach and were easy to move aside for Perrin's examination. Now all she had to do was wait for him. Leo had already brought her a breakfast tray filled with meat which she'd eaten without hesitation, and now she rested on a window seat, staring out at the riotous ocean. The waves were much like how she felt, tumultuous and uneasy, unable to settle. Even the baby continued to stretch and push against her in response to her unsettled state. Low voices sounded from below, the heavy thud of the front door being pushed closed reaching her, and she knew someone had been granted entrance. Perrin. Now it seemed she'd be examined, given the all clear, and then she'd have to face Galen. It wasn't something she was looking forward to, but it was necessary. Masculine voices grew nearer, some entreating and some downright aggressive. And she wondered if Galen had violated Perrin's orders. She'd been told that the pack doctor was above all others when it came to matters of health. Apparently not. With a sigh, she slowly turned her body, dropping her feet to the floor, and uncurling herself in preparation of the doctor's entrance. Except when the door opened, that's not to who met her gaze. Andrea. The alpha bitch smiled. Good morning. How is my child? A low masculine gasp reached her and she met Leo's gaze over the woman's head. Fury filled his gaze, the expression directed at Andrea, and then it flicked to Lissa. So many emotions filled his face, flickering from regret to fury, and then he was gone. He whirled on his heel and stomped away. His level of anger made her wonder if he was finally realizing the type of male his alpha truly was. My child is perfectly healthy, she countered. He's yours for now. We'll see how long that lasts. Her son trembled within her womb, and she laid her hands across her stomach. Forever. You intimidated me once and I ran. But this time you can be damn sure you are not getting your hands on this baby. Neither of you are. Like I said, we'll see. Andrea smirked. No. It wasn't happening. Period. If denials didn't work with this woman, she could revert to the truth as Perrin explained it. No matter my problems with Galen, I'm his mate and this is his child. He wouldn't hurt either of us. Yellow eyes clashed with hers, Andrea's inner wolf making its presence known. With that bright flare, the shape of Andrea's mouth changed, wolfen fangs pushing through her gums, and she curled her lips to expose the deadly teeth. No, but that doesn't mean I won't. Andrea took a step farther into the room, and Lissa scanned the large space for some type of weapon. Andrea's wolf was close to the surface, and Lissa realized it was only a matter of time before the alpha bitch attacked her. Only hope now was to stall, and if that failed, hit Andrea hard enough to distract her while Lissa ran for help. No matter what problems swirled around her and lingered between her and Galen, he had issued orders for her care. She didn't imagine he was aware of Andrea's presence. Unless he was. She hated this fucking indecision, this unease and wavering beliefs in him. So what's your plan, Andrea? Lissa eased toward the bed, particularly the bedside table. Maybe she could grab a lamp. You. Gone. And Galen is okay with this? Keep her talking. Keep her talking. I told you before you ran, you stupid bitch. Galen and I are meant to be together. We're ruling this pack. I may not be his mate, but I am his equal. That baby is ours. The woman flexed her hands and fur erupted from her pores. Make this easy on yourself. Don't fight. Lissa clutched her stomach. He won't live if you take him now. Andrea bared her teeth with a growl. I have a doctor who will ensure he lives. And you don't. The alpha bitch took another step toward her, and Lissa reached for the bedside lamp, hand trembling as she fought to wrap her fingers around the decoration. But there's still a risk to him. Stop delaying the inevitable. Do you really think Galen would want you to gamble with his son's life in such a way? Andrea smirked. Who says he doesn't already know? A harsh, growling, snarling voice cut through their conversation. I do. Part of her may hate him, but she sighed in relief to see him framed in the bedroom doorway. Galen. Where Lissa whimpered in relief, Andrea purred. Galen. Alpha. He snapped the correction. Get the fuck away from my mate. Now. But Galen. Andrea turned her attention to him fully and took a step in his direction. We had plans. Before I found my mate, he growled, the sound rolling and growing in volume with each passing heartbeat. And you're why she ran, aren't you? He took a step toward her and Andrea stiffened. I told her what we'd discussed. That we would take the child of another. Adopt, you crazy bitch. Adopt. He rolled his shoulders and fur sprouted and coated his neck and cheeks. You almost cost me my family. No, she shook her head. I'm your family. With the baby we'll be. Andrea must have finally realized the truth, recognizing that Galen wasn't backing down from his aggressive stance. He wasn't attempting to console her or agree with her in any way. We'll. Her voice was thin and high-pitched, and Lissa watched as the disbelief rippled across her body. We're. You said. Galen released a rapid whip of Greek, the words seeming to pierce the woman's heart. But nothing. You may be an alpha bitch but not mine. No more. He launched into Greek once more and Andrea flinched as she dropped her gaze to the floor. Lissa may have despised the woman, but it seemed as if Galen was grinding her beneath his boot heel. Galen. She eased away from the bedside table and took a step toward him. Don't you think? Don't you speak, you hairless bitch. Andrea spun on her, gaze intent and hate filled her expression. I'll. Then he was there, arm wrapped around Andrea's waist and bodily lifting her from the floor. The woman tried to shift, fur sprouting over her skin, arms and legs shortening and transforming, but a harsh word from Galen had the change halting in its tracks. Enough. Galen shook her. Enough. He hauled her to the bedroom door and tossed her into the hallway. She spied Leo and Stavros lurking nearby, and the men were quick to grasp their alpha bitch. Secure her and contact the grease. Alpha. The words were immediately followed by a howl from Andrea. You do not speak. You are lucky you are breathing. You interfered with a mating and will be punished as such. Get her out of here. He remained in place, even after the guards disappeared with the snarling alpha bitch. He stood framed in the doorway, his broad shoulders tense. Wasn't until the barks and howls died down that he allowed himself to move. But it wasn't to come to her. No, his entire body slumped, his shoulders dropping and spine curling in. He took a deep breath as if he was preparing himself to face her, but yet he still remained in place. She didn't want to call him broken, he was too strong and fierce a man for something like this to shatter him. No, not broken but cracked. Vulnerable. He took another of those deep breaths and finally straightened, turning toward her. Pure determination and unbendable steel filled his expression. The wolf was still near the surface with its sprinkling of fur and yellow eyes, and she could practically see his Greek pride wrapped around him in a cloak. This was the man she'd first met, the one who swept her off her feet and into his bed within 24 hours of meeting. He'd convinced her to spend her vacation with him with that fierce desire and overwhelming dominance. He'd bulldozed her, coddled her, cared for her with the sweetest touches and most passionate embraces. He made her fall in love with him the same way, and even as she ran, that love hadn't been truly banished. And even what damage it suffered beneath Andrea's actions, it had been slowly repaired by the time they spent together. Those remaining dents and dings were filled when pure surprise coated his features at Andrea's words, and he was quick to tear her from their lives. You're not leaving. I thought I could be the bigger man and let you leave. Since you despise me so much, But that is impossible. You are staying. The words were firm and not to be denied. He was the Liakos Pack Alpha at this moment. You may hate me all you like, but you are mine. That child is mine. He crossed his arms over his chest. I will not have my family outside my den. No. I will not let you go. He released a growl, curling his lip and exposing one elongated fang in a pure threat. He didn't understand. If you would let me finish. I was saying that, no, we won't be outside your den. Some of the tension left his body, but still he remained in place. Lissa took a step toward him and then another, gradually lessening the distance between them. As long as you tell me Andrea was lying. Shock filled his features. Of course she was lying. A Greek male alpha would never do such a thing to his woman. His woman wasn't exactly a declaration. Am I your woman? Now he glared at her. You have been since the moment I laid eyes on you, the moment I scented you. He huffed. Why are we discussing this? You are my mate. This is done. There is nothing else to talk about. She took another step forward. What does that mean? I do not know why you continue. You love me. I know this, so why do you fight? Lissa shook her head. She did love him, but not his Greek pride that wouldn't let him say anything other than mine. Or perhaps that was his wolf speaking. Or his business mind that never gave up on a deal. It was just her luck that she fell in love with a Greek werewolf tycoon. I want the words, Galen. Am I your woman? What does it mean to be your mate? Am I just a convenient broodmare who gets left out of your life? A low growl came from him, not of anger but frustration. He closed the distance between them in 2 giant strides, and then she was enveloped in his firm embrace. Despite her large belly, he managed to hold her close and snug against him. You are the one for me. I will never desire another. I want no other. We will rule this pack together. I will have an alpha bitch to control the female wolves, that cannot be avoided, but I only share myself with you. Is this what you needed to know? Yes. It was everything to her. Everything she'd hoped for, and she was afraid to let those hopes rise too high. Galen grunted. Good. Any further conversation was silenced by someone's approach, and Perrin quickly filled the doorway, his always present bag in one hand. Worry-coated his features, and he focused intently on Galen. What are you doing here? I told you to. I know what you told me, but I could not stay away from my mate. Galen's eyes remained locked on her as he spoke to his brother. Did you speak with Leo and Stavros? Perrin sighed and ran his free hand through his midnight hair. Yes. An announcement will have to be made. Yes, but not until I have properly cared for Lissa. Has the news spread of not only Andrea's incarceration, but also the joy of their alpha joining with his mate? Galen, I'm concerned that Melissa. She didn't know what was involved in an alpha joining with his mate, but she wanted nothing more than to be with him in any way possible. She'd been stupid to listen to Andrea and not question Galen, to keep her mouth shut when Andrea abused her, but things were different now. Melissa is fine. Your words last night, Perrin reminded her. That was because of Andrea and her interference. She tilted to the side to meet Perrin's stare. We're going to straighten things out, Perrin. We're going to talk. Galen lowered his head and nuzzled her neck, lips against her ear. We will do more than talk. I heard that, Perrin snapped. If Lissa feels up to it, and only then. Galen, her mate, growled anew and she rolled her eyes. It's his job to look after me. That's my job. A discreet cough sliced through their conversation and her mate turned his attention to the doorway once again to find Leo lingering. Alpha. Lissa patted his chest. Go take care of the pack. Perrin wanted to examine me. And he will come give you a report as soon as he's done. He brushed a soft kiss across her lips. I do not wish to leave you. But your pack needs you. And she needs rest. Perrin cut in again. She received one last tender kiss, this one more firm than the last, but not nearly passionate enough for her tastes. I will come to you when this is finished. With that, he released her and strode toward the door, stopping only long enough to murmur a few words to Perrin. The doctor's cheeks flushed, but he nodded, and then Galen truly was gone. When Perrin was closer, she spoke. What did he say? He wanted to know if it was safe for you to do more than talk, for he does not want his desires to hurt you. She licked her lips, a different kind of tension thrumming through her. And, what did you say? More redness. I said yes. Perrin said yes, and Lissa, after all of this, with love still filling her heart, she wanted to say yes as well.